There is a piece of paper that sits inside the pages of history as one of the most unusual artifacts ever produced by a human hand. It is a check written in 1987 by a young man who was broke, who was sleeping in a van, whose family had no home, no safety net, no guarantee of tomorrow. He took out this check and he made it out to himself, Jim Carrey, for the amount of $10 million. In the memo line he wrote, "For acting services rendered," and then he dated it 10 years in the future, Thanksgiving 1995. He carried that check in his wallet every single day. And in 1994, just before that date arrived, he was offered $10 million to star in Dumb and Dumber. Now, before you dismiss this as a fairy tale, before your rational mind says, well, that's just a coincidence, I want you to stay with me, because the check was never the point. The check was a tool, a device, a daily reminder of one thing and one thing only. He believed it before he could see it. That is the entire lesson, that is everything, but let's not stop there, let's go back further, because Jim Carrey's belief didn't begin with a check, it began in the ruins. Jim Carrey was born in Newmarket, Ontario, Canada in 1962, and for a while life was ordinary. His father Percy was a musician who gave up his dream to work as an accountant, a decision that haunted the family. His mother Kathleen struggled with chronic illness and depression. Jim watched his father surrender his joy for the sake of practicality, and it planted something deep inside him, a refusal to do the same. As a child, Jim was electric, funny beyond reason. He would perform for his family, contorting his face into impossible shapes, doing impressions, doing anything to make people laugh. His mother, even on her worst days, would light up. And Jim learned something crucial, that he had a gift, and that gift mattered. It had power. It could change the temperature of a room. But when Jim was 12, the world collapsed. His father lost his accounting job. The family fell into poverty so severe that they were forced to move into a Volkswagen van and later onto the grounds of a factory where Percy had managed to find work. The entire family, Jim, his parents, his siblings, worked shifts at the factory to survive. Jim was a teenager doing 8-hour shifts after school, arriving exhausted, falling behind, falling apart. And here is what most people do in that moment. Most people conclude, this is what life is, this is what I am, this is what I deserve. Jim Carrey did not conclude that. He wrote his teachers a memo at 15 years old explaining that he was funnier and more talented than his grades suggested, and that he intended to become a famous comedian. He sent himself at 15 to Yuck Yuck's comedy club in Toronto, walked on stage and bombed spectacularly. The audience hated him. He was booed. He came back. He came back because he understood something that most people spend their whole lives learning or never learning at all. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the curriculum. There is a concept in psychology called self-efficacy, your belief in your ability to succeed in specific situations. Research by Albert Bandura showed that self-efficacy is one of the single greatest predictors of human achievement, not talent, not luck, not intelligence. Belief. But here is what we get wrong about belief. We think belief is something that arrives after evidence. We think, show me the results and then I will believe. Show me the success and then I will trust myself. Show me the open door and then I will walk forward with confidence. Jim Carrey did the opposite. When he moved to Los Angeles in his early 20s, he had nothing. No connections, no money, no guarantee. He would drive his old car up to Mulholland Drive at night, that famous road that curves along the hills above Hollywood, and he would look down at the lights of the city. And he would visualize. He would see himself being sought after by directors. He would feel the handshakes, imagine the conversations, picture himself successful. Every night. Not because he was delusional, not because he was ignoring reality, but because he understood that the mind does not know the difference between a vividly imagined experience and a real one. Every time he sat in that car and felt the feeling of success, he was training his nervous system, shaping his identity, reinforcing the belief, I belong here, I am this, I am already becoming what I intend to be. He wasn't lying to himself, he was leading himself. There is a difference between denial and vision. Denial says, things are not hard. Vision says, things are hard and I am going somewhere beyond them. Jim never denied the hardship, he just refused to let the hardship write the ending. Success, when it comes, often looks sudden to the outside world. From 1983 to 1994, Jim Carrey grounded out. He performed stand-up. He got small roles. He landed a spot on the sketch comedy show In Living Color, which gave him a platform. He developed characters, Ace Ventura, the Mask, Lloyd Christmas, that lived inside him for years before any camera ever captured them. And then 1994 happened. In a single year, 3 films were released: Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. All 3 were massive hits. The world discovered Jim Carrey seemingly overnight. But you and I know it wasn't overnight. It was 11 years of overnight. It was a decade of carrying a check in your wallet when no one else could see what you saw. It was driving up a hill and talking to the city lights about who you intended to become. It was being booed off a stage at 15 and coming back at 16. The lesson here is not that persistence guarantees success. The lesson is this: you cannot reach a destination you don't believe exists. Every step toward something begins with the conviction that the something is real, that you are capable of getting there, that you are, in some important sense, already on the way. Now I want to go deeper, because Jim Carrey himself has gone deeper. In the years after his explosive success, after the fame and the money and the $10 million films, Jim Carrey went through profound personal struggles. Depression, the death of his mother, a painful divorce, a public battle with mental health. And what came out of those struggles was something extraordinary. He began speaking openly, vulnerably, philosophically about the nature of identity and self-belief. In a famous commencement speech at Maharishi University in 2014, he said something that I want you to sit with. "I learned many great lessons from my father, not the least of which was that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love." His father, Percy, played it safe. He gave up music for accounting, and then he lost the accounting job anyway. The safety he chose offered no safety at all. And Jim watched that and made a different choice. If I'm going to risk failure, and we are all going to risk failure because life guarantees nothing, I am going to risk it in the direction of my truest self. This is the deeper teaching of self-belief. It is not about arrogance. It is not about ego. It is not about thinking you are better than others or that the universe owes you something. It is about alignment. It is about the courage to trust the signal inside you, the pull towards something, and to follow it even when the world around you cannot yet see what you see. Jim Carrey has also spoken about something he calls the need. He said that his drive, his hunger, came not from confidence but from need, the desperate, urgent, alive feeling that this was what he was made for. That need became fuel, that need became direction. What is your need? What is the thing inside you that refuses to stay quiet? What is the dream you keep returning to, the vision you keep seeing, the identity you keep feeling is more you than the one you're currently living? That feeling is not a coincidence, that feeling is information. Let me be precise about something, because self-belief is often misunderstood. Self-belief is not the absence of doubt. Jim Carrey had doubt. He was terrified before performances. He struggled with depression. He questioned himself. Self-belief does not mean you never hear the voice that says, "Who do you think you are?" Self-belief means you act anyway, you carry the check anyway, you drive up the hill anyway, you walk back on stage anyway. Self-belief is not a feeling you wait for. It is a practice you choose. It is the decision made again and again and again to treat your vision as real before anyone else confirms it. And here is what happens when you practice that. The world begins to bend toward you, not because of magic, because of direction. Because a person who believes in their destination makes different choices than a person who doesn't. They say yes to different things. They stay longer, they try again sooner. They attract people who can sense their conviction. And slowly, not overnight but surely, the external world begins to catch up with the internal world. Jim Carrey's check was not a magic spell, it was a compass. It said, "This is north, move toward north." I want to leave you with a question, and I want you to take it seriously. If you wrote yourself a check today, not for money necessarily, but for the life you want, what would it say? What would you make it out to yourself for? What would the memo line read? What date would you write? And I want you to notice every reason you have for not writing that check, every voice that says that's foolish, that's unrealistic, that's not for someone like me, that is the voice Jim Carrey defeated. Not once, not in a dramatic movie moment, but every single day in a van, on a hill, on a stage where people booed him. He defeated it by continuing. He defeated it by believing before there was evidence. He defeated it by writing the check. You have something inside you, a direction, a calling, a version of yourself that is waiting to be inhabited. The distance between where you are and where you are meant to be is not talent, it is not luck, it is not circumstance. It is belief. Write the check, carry it with you, drive up to the hill of your imagination every night and look out at the life you intend to build. Feel it, mean it, let it change the choices you make tomorrow morning. Because the world has never once met a person who fully, deeply, relentlessly believed in themselves and had absolutely nothing to show for it. You already are, you just haven't arrived yet.
Go!